Hey, today I'm here with my buddy Nick Schneider, and Nick is, full disclosure, a past client of mine, not just once, but also twice. So I always appreciate that. That's the very best kind. But wanted to talk to Nick because a lot of the people I've been talking to have been more my age, in their maybe 40s, mid 40s, 50s, whatever that is. And Nick's a generation or two younger than me, and I think it would be good to hear what your perspective is on some of these things related to men's health, just because growing up in what I would call a more digital era, like a lot of the things that you'll hear people my age say is, I'm glad that we didn't have iPhones back then. I'm glad that none of this was able to be recorded back then because we probably got into an equal amount of trouble, but not everything that we did was recorded and broadcast for everybody to see. So, just starting from that perspective, do you feel like as you go through your day to day life, when you're doing things, is there a second thought in your head that you have to consider before you do it? Because this might get put on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or something, or is there a constraint, or is it just so normal that you have the freedom to do whatever you want and you don't even give it a second thought?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I guess for the audience, I'm in my early 30s, specifically 32. And so, yeah, I think there's not a lot that's talked about in terms of public persona or internet persona.
Hmm.
I guess not to speak for my whole generation, but technically we were the last ones to be alive before the advent of, social media. And, I've kind of seen through that growth. I remember watching all, Steve Jobs's old things when he announced the iPhone. I work in technology and stuff, so it was always fascinating to me. But yeah, there's definitely kind of a perspective of, how you're going to be perceived on the internet. Contrastly, I would say there's probably, I live in Colorado, so fashion-wise, it's a lot more casual here. And so I think historically people probably cared more about how they look in public, like in the physical public, and now people care more about how they look in the public in the virtual public. Interesting point though, Ryan.
Yeah. Do you care? Or
Uh, I pretend to not care. I think that's probably the best answer. Like we're gonna just like hit the honesty hard. You try your best to kind of be this stoic and unaffected person. But the haters are out there. So I think it either manifests itself in two ways. Like I have some friends that have a public persona and they post like just so much content. Whereas I feel I'm on kind of the opposite side where I'm like very stringent about how what I post to the internet and stuff like that. Everything needs to be well manicured and put out there. It's like can't be anything needs to go through my PR firm. So
do you feel like it's easier to kind of move through like a, pardon my language, a bullshit detector because you're like, or does it create second guesses when you're meeting someone and you're like, wait a minute, I see how you show up online or virtually, but you're either consistent or not consistent. Like, does it make it easier or harder to understand them and form relationships?
oh man, thought this was going to be an easy interview today, Ryan. That's a good question. I would say that in general, people's public or internet facing persona is different than their IRL
Hmm.
persona. Um, I think we all kind of have a dopamine addiction anyway, and so it's like we're obsessed with our phones. Sorry, obsessed with our phones, and we live our lives through kind of the pixels. I will say I've definitely dated some people who were influencers, and I found it difficult to connect with people on a personal level because their job was always online, right? Like they never could disconnect from the interwebs, from the public persona that they were kind of trying to put out. and definitely gave a little bit of a kind of a facade. That BS meter definitely kind of important. But I would say most of my close friends are not people that are, super crazy influencers or anything like that.
Does does the internet and the online digital persona affect how you personally view your own value?
Oh, of course, right? Like, so I grew up in New York. Pre social media, it was already a really intense place to kind of grow up. And so all the most talented people in the world move to New York, then they have kids, and then they move out to the suburbs. And so then growing up, I was just competing with all the world's most talented children. And it's very intense, kind of like pressure cooker environment. That's kind of the analogy I like to use for social media as well, which is like you're not just competing with like the guy down the street or your neighbor, right? It's no longer like living with the Joneses of Colorado. It's like living with the Joneses of Abu Dhabi or, some crazy rich oil person. So, yeah, absolutely, definitely affects. There's definitely some positive aspects where you're raising the bar of what's possible, but definitely more negativity than positivity.
So then from like a mental health standpoint, how do you balance that so you're not always competing with them and you're just like, how do I just focus on my own stuff and dial out that noise?
Well, in my early 20s, it was just a lot of, you know, resentment for myself. But, what's the saying that I use? Comparison's the thief of joy. It's like it took me a long time to realize that like this is your own journey. This is my own personal journey. If I compare my journey to other people, um, oftentimes I'm going to be let down because there's just so many things, so many different factors and different venues of your life that you're not going to be the biggest fish in every single one of them. And so I'm like, I need to take a pragmatic approach to this. Otherwise, I'm going to spiral myself into self-hate. So,
Do you feel like, I grew up in a generation where you just didn't really talk about things a whole lot or quite as much. And so now, from a mental health standpoint, now I can feel like or see that I think things like anxiety and therapy and mental health are more commonly discussed. That doesn't mean that there's still not a very, very long way for that to go. But do you feel like that's being normalized more for your generation, or is there still a stigma around that?
I mean, there's certainly still a stigma about it, right? Like, no matter what way we want to slice it, there's still like the societal expectation to be stoic, and kind of self-reliant as a guy. Um, And, that kind of makes it's obviously harder to ask for help, especially kind of in the emotional side of things, where a lot of times kind of those emotional venues are either through competition with other guys, through kind of a romantic relationship, or like through you know, your kind of nucleus of a support circle of those really close friends that you have, which obviously makes it kind of difficult. The pressure's really there. I would say my generation has a little bit more outlets than previous generations, but like, there's definitely still that kind of that stigma around kind of being stoic.
Do you feel that pressure from women as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. Ryan, I think when we met, I was still single. I'm in a happy relationship now. But I definitely would say that like the people that I would met would be really interested to know that I was in therapy, but wouldn't really want to know the details of the therapy. I think that's like, oh, you're doing your work, but I don't really care about the details. Whereas some of their female friend conversations that I would witness, they would go into lots of detail. And so I was like, okay, you want me to know that I'm working on it, but you don't want to you don't want to help that problem. You're not interested in helping me to solve those things. Um, which is fine. Um, but yeah, no, that definitely happens. You get that pressure for women as well. Um, it's very difficult to kind of get those level of details unless you had shared an experience with someone like one of your guy friends or a family member or something like that.
Yeah.
So
So then like women obviously are more and more independent. now. I mean, one of the, from my business, as a mortgage broker, one of the biggest, what I say, like segments or classes of people that I help is single women. It's one of the fastest growing home buying populations. And actually, single men are, lower because single women mature quicker and single men are more likely to hang out with their buddies and maybe, stay in a three-bedroom apartment or whatever that might look like. And so, like, we're seeing them kind of move up and not like this, I don't need you, but want you, but I'm not. They're not messing. They're not playing with boys here, right? They're not playing with little boys. Like you got to be man. Do you feel pressure
Sure.
on that? Do you feel that from your dating experience?
Yes and no, right? I would say I know you're a mortgage broker, Ryan, so I'm not trying to beat up on your business, but there's nothing wrong with renting. Renting's great. If you value
100%.
your time and like you want someone else to take care of your things, renting is great. It's always a great option. Home ownership is also great. Um, but yeah, to kind of answer your question of like, do I feel pressure? All these single women have their own houses, and back in the day, I don't. I will say my current partner does have her own house, which I'm proud to say. It used to be like a nice braggy thing when I would go on dates, but I'm on real estate and stuff, and my partner's like I own my own real estate as well. So I think. I think it's good and bad. Like I think in general, guys tend to rise to the occasion if they feel as though it is an achievable kind of goal or achievable level. Is that pressure? Absolutely. But I also think it's like, a rising tide raises all ships. I think it's good. I think women should definitely buy a lot of real estate. I think men should also buy a lot of real estate. But it definitely puts pressure when you're kind of in a competitive environment of like comparing yourself to other people and their own success. It definitely, you know, raises the bar and kind of puts the pressure on you to succeed. The one thing I will say, Ryan, is I think in general, men tie their identity to their own professional and financial success, um, which I think is not often talked about.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're do you feel like you're supposed to have it all figured out already?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Then how do you handle that?
I mean, you just strive to be successful, right? Like it's you can be mad that the world works the way that it does, or you can figure out how to make it work for you. Got to put your head down. You got to pick some kind of career that has relatively good growth and stability. You got to put your head down and shut the other things out. And unfortunately, my late 20s were a very lonely time because I wasn't really taken seriously you know, until I turned 30 in the dating world and I had a real job and all those other things. So.
What does the next 5 to 10 years look like then? When you think about the next 5 to 10 years, what are you more hopeful for when it comes to your health, your, physical health and mental health? Obviously, what I see of you on Instagram is a lot of, physical health and weightlifting and um, deadlifting insane amounts of weight. But like that's fun and cool. But like, what are the other things that you're hopeful for in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I will say that I work out for the mental benefits versus the physical benefits. Decide to partake in a hobby that will have an endless number of goals and new achievements. Something that I can commit to like long term.
Hmm?
But in terms of like the mental health and physical health aspect of things, um, it's finding that right person, right? I have a great relationship now, but finding that right person, settling down. There's some financial aspects that, I'm like, maybe I buy another house, maybe I buy an income property or a vacation home or something like that. Um, and so for me, one of the things that I've learned about my personal mental health is that like I always need to be working towards something. I always need another goal, another milestone to be striving towards. And this year I sat down with my partner during Thanksgiving. We wrote down our yearly goals. So I think it's kind of more of that, right? Like it's more of like, what do we want to achieve on a year by year basis? A 5 year domain timeline is very long.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I like small achievable things. A year is almost too long as well. A year is a long time. Um, so I would say it's more of that. It's more of sitting down, what do we want to see out of our lives? Really romanticize the life that you're living. Um, and like part of that comes and is stemmed from the discipline of having a routine and having a workout plan and another aspect of that is just to enjoy it, right? Like it's it's easy to be hard on yourself. So
Yeah. Then kind of wrap up with one other question of what are things that the generations above you, what are things of like whether it's wisdom or advice that things that they've done that you wish you could learn more about or had more perspective on?
hmm. So Ryan, truthfully, I don't work with a lot of people in your generation. I typically my managers are the people above you. Um, um, are you asking kind of about my parents' generation, or you're saying,
Just
you know,
anyone, yeah, like oh, you hear stories and a lot of like when I was your age or whatever, things were
mm,
different. There is wisdom that comes with that, but there's growth that comes with that too. Obviously, we already talked about how that's different, but what are things that they are doing? It doesn't have to be work related, but just as if however broadly you may define masculinity and being a man as they are, like what are more things that you wish you could learn from them?
um, I'm probably gonna say something to this generation that they're not gonna like. Um, but I wish that Gen X's were a little more vocal about their struggles as well.
Hmm.
I feel like I see, you see a lot of people at the gym, of every generation, because at any point, someone looks themselves in the mirror and they're like, all right, well, we got to make a change. But you honestly see a lot of that kind of self-hate, that self-reflection, the kind of like, I'm gonna put my head down and just not talk about my problems. And I think that's a detriment to the future generations. Um, right, I'm not saying that you should be a giant crybaby and complain all the time, but I find that kind of the generation above me is just like kind of suffers in silence.
Hmm.
And I think in some ways it's good that my generation is starting to talk about those things. Um, But yeah, I would say it's like sometimes it's okay to suffer in silence, but like it's okay to no one's gonna judge you. Or if they are, they're probably judging themselves.
Are these things that like I know that you have close relationship with a few of your buddies. Are these things that you guys talk about, just among yourselves as well? Like even more so from just like, yeah, I had a bad day. Like, oh, sorry to hear that. And then it moves on to like, well, what do you Rocky sure suck, right? Like to whatever else
Hmm.
conversation. Or are you guys digging in more and more deeply to say, tell me about it?
Yeah, so definitely spoiled to be kind of with my buddies. They live in my house, and we have little sauna therapy sessions. So while we're all sweating profusely, trying to concentrate on just breathing. We'll talk about these things a lot. It's honestly a great environment because we're all kind of in this kind of same age group, really trying to figure out where we are in terms of the world and how we see our growth and what success is and what happiness looks like and what we look for in our partners, etc. So I would say, I'm probably one of the lucky few to have a support system like that. Some would argue that could be the reason why I found success in the world.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say definitely we're having those conversations on a probably regular basis.
Yeah. Any parting advice? Anything else that you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, you gotta put the work in, right? Like you really do. Like I went to therapy for a long time, and talking about my shit. Um, and you you need to have a locus control of yourself, right? Like you really do need to have this sense of self-reliance. And although I definitely understand and empathize with people blaming the world for their problems, like that is not a productive mindset to have. Um, so, Jocko Willink, great books. Like Ultimate Responsibility, all kind of the lessons that he gives you, Stoic leadership. Um, you know, I think those are the things that like you really need, the tools that you need. You kind of have to have this kind of self resilience that you're going to kind of do it all, but sharing the successes with your friends and like-minded people. It's not a competition.
Yeah.
There's two ways to build the tallest building in the city. It's tear everybody else's building down, or just build the tallest building. So go and build the tallest building.
Yeah. Love it, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. So thanks for sharing, and any all the rest of the advice that you have, people can find you on Instagram.
Sure.